It's another beautiful day and a warm welcome to another episode of Today's Parent, where we connect you with experts and provide you with information to make your parenting journey a bit more easier. I'm your host, Christine Casina. Think about one topic that parents are scared about when it comes to what they need to talk to their children about. I'll tell you what it is: sex. How do you talk to your children about sex? In today's episode, we have counselor Esther Mbao, who's going to break it down to you, and we'll make it age appropriate so you are covered from the time they're small and to when they're teenagers. Welcome to today's show. Esther.
Yes.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Always glad to be here.
We are talking about the three-letter word.
S-E-X.
S-E-X.
Yes.
Did your parent ever talk to you about it?
Hardly. Actually, I don't think so.
What were we told about
sex? I think
sex?
about it. We're told it's bad manners. And don't go play with the boys. Now you're a girl,
Don't play with the boys.
Yes, don't play with the boys. And it's bad manners. And I think we grew up with this myth that it's done under the covers.
Yeah.
In the darkness, under the blankets. So it's a taboo topic in our community and in our society. So it's not something that is very easy for anyone and everyone to talk about.
Yeah.
However, I like to start with saying you're always who's the person going into that relationship. So you need to ask yourself, even for myself, where am I at in terms of my sex? And sex is a small component of sexuality. Mm-hmm. Because sexuality is all about who I am as a person.
Right.
How male or female do I feel? Intellectually, are we learning from each other and are we giving the right information?
At that time?
From the word go. You need to teach about sex from the word go, because we are created as sexual beings. It doesn't come at some point.
No.
We are created
That's naturally what we are.
as sexual beings. That's who we are. It's the core of who we are. It's what drives the human race to keep moving and to keep reproducing and to keep growing.
So how did we get to a point where we look at sex, like you say, it is bad manners, it's a dirty thing, and how do we get to the point where we demystify sex to be a beautiful thing? And to the teenagers who are listening to us right now, God forbid, they think, but wale watu wa switch wajisema, sex is a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing when it is done at the right time, and so to say, with the right person. The right person is very relative, but it's not done whenever and wherever. But it is a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. And we got to that place of sex is bad because our parents are not comfortable to talk to us
about it. Yeah.
So to keep us away from it, that's what we were told. And now we grew up with those beliefs. And these beliefs have affected who we are even as sexual beings.
Very true.
Yes,
Very
that's why
true.
it's still talked under harsh tones.
Yeah.
It's not talked about in public. Yet a lot of issues, when you look at them, go back to who we are as sexual beings. Mm-hmm. So we need to talk about it as sexuality, not just the act, but as sexual beings. How good do I feel about myself? Self-esteem is still attached to how we are as sexual beings. Yeah. So we need to come to a place where we say, this is something we need to talk about. We may not talk about it openly, but we need to have these conversations frequently and often with our children.
Yeah.
Yes.
Speaking about today's parent, because we are talking to you, a young parent, we know better, we want to do better.
Yes.
Breaking it down from the time they are small. Mm-hmm. At what age do we need to start talking to our kids about sex?
From the time our children start learning how to talk.
Baba, mama.
Yes, we need to start talking about sexual issues, mm-hmm. and not the act, but about sexuality issues from that age of 2 years.
Okay.
What needs to happen is you need to first understand, you need to break it down to a language that is very palatable for the children.
Right.
So you need to first fully understand what you're talking to them about. And it's okay sometimes if a young child comes to talk to you and you don't have the information, it is still also okay. You can actually tell them, give me some time. We shall come and have this conversation at the right time. And what you do, go out there and read the right information. It is also important to start talking about it, like I've said, from the word go. Mm-hmm. And it's about their bodies first.
Okay.
The child at 2, I'm not saying you talk to them about the act. It's about naming the body parts.
How do you do that? So from 2 years onwards, we need to start having this conversation, starting with bodies and body parts.
Basic
and what is
parts.
what.
Yes. Let me demystify something that's commonly happening today. When you talk about head, shoulders, knees, and toes, how do you name the private parts?
In my textbooks, they were never named.
They were never named. What were you told, let's say, the male sexual organ was called?
I didn't go to a group of schools.
Okay. Generally, we call it a dudu, right?
Right.
You call it a dudu. So this child
Why do we
doesn't
call
know.
it that?
That's what I'm wondering. Yet, when you see a cockroach over there,
We still call it a
it's
dudu.
still a dudu. And what do we do to dudus?
We kill dudus.
Because dudus are bad. So this child grows up unconsciously with a belief system that I have a bad thing.
Oh.
Yes, because you're killing a bad thing. So I also have a bad thing. So we need to be very deliberate. As we name head, shoulders, knees, and toes, we call the private parts as they are. That is where, when the children grow up, you've actually formed a foundation to say that you can always come to me for the truth.
Right.
But you've called it dudu all along. Then they go to the wrong crowd and they're told it's actually not a dudu. They'll be like, my parents never told me the truth,
what
so
else
I
can
can
you say that
never
I'll trust?
go back to them. I can never trust what they say. So it begins with the very basic.
So 2
naming
years,
of body parts.
name the parts.
Name the parts. And it is okay for them to say those parts even in public.
In front of people.
It is okay. With age, it goes away. With age, it goes away. But at least they know their basic body parts. When they get to the age of 3 to 5, where they're learning to shower and to say, I can do this for myself. You need to start teaching them about setting boundaries, because these are private parts. So you need to teach them that these private parts can only be touched by you. Even mommy and daddy, if they're to touch, it's with your permission. And it's because we have a very valid reason. Otherwise, nobody's supposed to touch them. So as you're teaching them to shower, you're teaching them this is a territory not to be touched, and you're also not allowed to touch the other person's territory.
So at 3 years, at 5 years, they can get it.
And if somebody touches it,
I report them to mom or dad.
Yes, this we are also averting sexual abuse, because if you don't teach them about boundary settings, anybody will have their way. And this is how sexual abuse takes place. And then they know deep down, because as sexual beings, we know when we are violated. Deep down, they know they've been violated, but you didn't teach them. So when it's too late, that's when they come and tell you, actually, this is what has been happening. So we need to be the ones who actually start the conversations. That's another pointer. We need to learn as parents. We don't wait for them to come and ask. We need to be the ones to initiate these conversations. And sometimes you also need to ask consent from your child, even as they get older. Can we talk about this? I have a teen. When he was a preteen, and I would try to talk about this, he'd be like, mom, let's not talk about this. And I'd be like, it's okay not to talk about it now, but we need to talk about it eventually. So be the initiator of these conversations. After you've set their boundaries, they start asking at that age. If they're the firstborns, they'll start asking, am I getting another sibling?
So this is what, still between 3 to 5?
3 to 5 there. They're asking, am I getting a sister? Am I getting a brother? Where do they come from?
From the supermarket. That is what we tell them.
And then when they go to the supermarket, and we know our supermarkets, they don't see any babies. So you're confusing your child even further. And the world is already more confusing.
What should we tell them?
Tell them babies come from mommy's stomach at that age. They don't even need to know the nitty-gritties. It's just that in mommy's stomach, a child will be put. If you're a spiritual being, you'll say, God will give mommy a child. The child will grow. And when the child is ready, the child will come out. They won't even ask you how. They just need to know the basics. They just need to know the fundamentals of the truth. And then when they get to 6, 7, that's when they'll start asking, so how does the baby come out?
And you say?
And this is where you need to be very open and say that actually, you know, mommy, if you're talking to a boy, mommy has what we call a uterus, which is a tummy that holds the baby until the baby is ready. And if it is a girl, you need to tell the girl, you have the same, but it's not yet ready. And so the baby will come out this way. Simple, basic language.
Wait, so I will say the baby will come out this way?
Through the uterus.
Through the uterus?
Yes. They won't ask them many questions. And this is something
I don't need to volunteer at that point.
No.
Okay.
Children just want the basic of information.
Okay.
Very basic. And you also need to know as a parent, it's not just the responsibility of the same gender parent to give this information.
So this is not mom's role?
No.
Dad's
Mom
role.
and dad need to be involved in this conversation, either at the same time or in different times. But the children need to know we are a tag team. As parents, we are a tag team, and you can come to us to talk to us about sexuality issues. Okay? Like I keep saying, sexuality is also about the self-esteem. So as you're talking to them about this, are you making them feel comfortable about how male or female they are?
Yeah.
You know, also as parents, sometimes we contribute to pulling down our children, and they feel less of who they're supposed to be because of small comments we make. You know, you're tiny, you're fatter, you're smaller. Make them feel comfortable in their own skin. This is also about talking about sexuality issues.
Right.
It's also about building their self-esteem. Because later in life, these are the things that affect us. You know, oh, my mom told me I'm too small.
Yeah.
Oh, my mom said I'm too hippie. Oh, my dad said this and that.
Yeah.
Those are things that come to haunt us later in life
Very
as
true.
grown-ups.
Very true.
When we should be enjoying our sexuality.
Can you remember the one girl in high school who used to have a sweater on no matter what, when it was
Yes.
so hot? Because
Yes.
probably they were told their boobs are too big
Yes.
That's sad.
That
That
is
is
very
sad.
sad because of just one small comment that was
Yeah.
made carelessly, you know? Or maybe it was made deliberately to make them feel, you know, toned down. That's not how to tone down children. You can talk to them in a very respectful way and they will still understand what you're communicating.
So what age are we at now? Are we at 10?
We're at 6 there. We're at
six
around
to-
6 to 7 there.
6 to 7, okay.
And they need to understand also, so how does a baby get formed? Because here's the thing, we've had 9-year-old children, and it's been in the media because I can
That
share
is
about
true.
it, having children. Because by the age of 9, they can fully grasp the act of sex.
Yeah.
So at 6, 7 there, they're trying to understand what really happens. And you don't also need to go to the nitty-gritties. You can tell them the egg of mommy and a seed from daddy is formed in mommy's stomach. And that's how a baby is formed. However, what happens is that this act only takes place between mommy and daddy. So you're not ready for it.
My brain is so overdeveloped. I have so many questions I want to ask you, but
I
I've
know,
never done
because
that.
also as a parent, you are saying you've not talked to your child about
No,
it.
I haven't, but I'm almost getting to the point of wanting to carry you home. So I can
I
stand
know
behind
every
you have that
parent wants to carry
conversation.
me home, but it's not also easy for me. Here I am as a counseling psychologist.
Yeah.
I can speak about it publicly
Yeah.
and very comfortably. But also when I go home as a parent, I'm like, do I really have to do it? You know? Then
I
I
hear
remind
you.
myself I'm empowered
Yeah.
and I know what it means to do this. So I gather my courage and put on my mommy hat and I have the conversation. So it's also not easy for me as a mommy. But as
hear
a
you.
counseling psychologist, it just flows.
I hear you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So when they reach the age of 8, 9, they can now fully grasp the full act of sex and they're fully grasping who they are as male and female, because at 9 also puberty is setting in. And there are all these changes that take place.
Yeah.
Many of us were not prepared for these changes.
No.
Many of us are not supported through these changes.
No.
We need to support our children. We need from the age of 7 to start telling them, actually, this is how your body will start changing because you're becoming now a grown-up. And it will be a process. So you need to start preparing them because like we say, children don't function very well when things just happen drastically. You need to prepare them psychologically. So even for the bodily changes, they just don't wake up one day and they're screaming, oh, what just happened to me? You know? There's hair.
I am bleeding.
There is hair. Am I normal? Or have I gone back to being a Zinjanthropus? You know?
Yeah. That can be confusing.
Very
That can be
confusing. You need to prepare them for this. This is part of the sex talk. Just letting them know their bodies will change. And you also need to affirm them that it will change at their own pace. Because at this point also they might notice some early bloomers.
Yeah.
And they're wondering, am I okay?
Yes.
And they start doubting themselves. You need to build on their self-esteem by just having these conversations and giving them the facts and letting them blossom at their own pace.
Esther, talking about pace, we have to take a short break. I know it sounds very exciting as we speak.
Yes.
And time is flying. We have to take a short break right now. And then when we come back from the break, you can share more pointers with the parents who are watching.
That's fine.
And with that, we are going to take a short break. In today's episode, we have Counselor Esther Mbao, and we are talking about sex, how you can break it down to your children in an age-appropriate way. I hope so far you've learned something. We'll be back with more after this break. Welcome back to today's episode of Today's Parent, where we are talking about sex. And in studio today, we have Esther Mbao, who's helping us learn how we can break it down to our children in an age-appropriate way. Esther,
Yes.
I have a short story to tell you.
Yes.
You mentioned before we went on the break that it's important for support to be there from both parents
Yes.
when it comes to matter sexuality and
Yes.
how our kids are developing. So I read somewhere, there was a short story that was going around of this girl. She then became, like when you're becoming a woman and then you start getting your menses. So she goes on to tell her dad, this is what is happening to me, what is happening, because she couldn't understand what is going on. You know,
Yes.
their kids were closer to their dads compared to their moms, so
Yes.
it looks like this was the case. So what the father did, he made a big deal out of it. Do you know what he did?
What?
He told her, we are going to have a party.
Wow.
We are going to have a party for you. You are turning into a woman.
That's amazing.
So to then demystify and to destigmatize this whole
Yes.
issue of menstruation and sexuality,
Yes.
if more parents can have like a red party or a
Yes.
menstruation party or a menses party,
Yes.
for their daughters who are then becoming young adults,
True. True.
and then empower them on matter sexuality.
True.
Bring somebody to talk to them like you.
Yeah.
That would help, don't you think?
That would be amazing. That's why I kept on saying that it's not a gender-based talk to have with your
Yeah,
children.
yeah.
Any parent needs to be empowered enough to have this conversation
Yeah.
and to support their children
Yeah.
through every stage of being a sexual being. And I want to affirm that, Father. That was amazing.
Especially for a guy, yeah?
Yes, for a guy to do that, I'm sure her self-esteem
Yeah.
is up there. You know,
Yeah.
like this is such a normal thing.
Yes.
I've embraced it. For some of us, it was so hard to even go and ask for the sanitary wear because
know?
it was a taboo to talk about it, you know?
Yeah.
And so your self-esteem, your dignity,
Yeah.
who you are as a woman just gets stripped away. Yet this is the core of who you are.
Very true.
So that is amazing.
That was amazing. I thought that was awesome.
And
That was
also
awesome.
as parents, and I'm talking like this because I know some of us may not be together, but we both need to be there for our children through the stages.
Absolutely.
Especially for them to see what is the role of the other gender.
Yeah.
If a child is a girl, she needs to experience the male part of a parent.
Absolutely.
To be able to understand what's the male role of a man in a relationship. If it is a boy, they need to understand what's the female role of a woman
Yeah.
in a relationship.
Yeah.
Or even the male role of a man if the father is not there. So sometimes you may not have both parents present, but you need as a parent to make provision. Can I have someone who's of the opposite gender to mentor this person, to mentor my child, so they can be able to interact with the opposite sex and be able to grasp what does it mean to have a relationship with the opposite gender? What does it mean when the opposite gender is around, you know? And this is all about being sexual beings because sexuality is also about meaningful relationships.
Absolutely.
And having meaningful relationships that have respect and dignity.
And then learning at that point of how a guy needs to treat a lady and
Thank
how a
you.
lady receives, for example, love from the guy
Yes.
and how to treat a guy as well.
Yes, and that's why I encourage a lot of fathers, be the first men who take your daughters on dates. For the mothers, be there when your sons start dating, you know. I've had some very tough conversations with my son, and he's currently dating, and we are at a place where I keep telling him, like, when you go to the supermarket, carry all the bags. Because when you take a girl to the supermarket, you need to be a gentleman. Carry these bags.
So chivalry is not dead.
Chivalry is not going to die in my homestead.
That's
I have
wonderful.
refused that.
That's wonderful.
Yes. So we're talking about the 8 to 9.
Let's go back to, we are now at 8 to 9.
Yes, 8 to 9, you need to explain to them in very basic terms the act of sex because they can fully grasp it.
Right.
Because from 10 to 12 there, you need to now also start talking about protection.
So these are our preteens.
Preteens.
And I know a lot of parents who are watching have preteens.
Yes.
And we have a question that has just come in actually from Irene.
Yes.
And her question is, how do I talk about sex? Or how do I break it down to my preteen and have that conversation about sex?
Because they've already learnt about a bit of it from science. So it's very easy for you to build up on it.
Right.
And you need to bring in that conversation of sex and sex protecting yourself sexually. Because let's be very honest, in this day and age,
Yeah.
you never know who has HIV.
Yeah.
You know, you never know who has an STI. So you need to talk to them from the word go. Like I've said, we've seen children as young as 9 having babies. So you need to talk to them about protection. And protection is not just up against pregnancy, but it's also against infections. Because in this day and age, you can never tell.
But do you think, Esther, for a parent who's watching, they could be thinking, if I start having this conversation about contraception with my child, will that encourage them to have sex? How do you how do you differentiate the two? Because a parent could be thinking, am I now empowering my child to have sex, or should I keep this information to myself and just tell them sex is bad?
Let me burst that bubble. If you're not the one empowering your child, who is? In this day and age of internet, we've put Wi-Fi in our houses. We have social media.
Yeah.
They have their friends. Sadly, we even have house helps who are actually taking advantage of our children. And I've had most men say their first experiences was with the house help.
Oh, no.
This was actually sexual abuse because it was not consented.
Yeah.
They took advantage of their power and authority and had their way with you sexually. So you need to ask yourself, if I'm not the primary source of this information, who's the primary source?
Who is?
And are they giving the right information? And are they looking out for the best interest of my child?
Yeah.
Yes. So as a parent, whether you choose to do it or not, someone is doing it.
So how can a parent like Irene then break it down to a preteen what sex is?
Like I keep saying, it's very basic information you need to start with. Do they first know the basic body part? I don't know if they've had this conversation before, but do they know that it's okay to say my penis or my vagina or my breast?
So you might have to go back to basics.
Basics first. Start with the basics.
Right.
Do they know about their body and the changes? Because this is a preteen. Do they know what they're experiencing and what is making them have these bodily changes?
Right.
Once you explain to them it's for a future, most children are very comfortable with just the information and not going to experiment. But children experiment because they're getting different information from different sources, and there's this gap the parent has not filled in.
Yeah.
Like I keep saying, every need is behavior driven. So they will go out there for this behavior because there's a need they're trying to meet. The need could be just the need to be empowered with the right information.
Yeah.
Once you do that, most children are very okay with waiting until the right time. What we also do with our teens, we need to keep them busy.
How do you keep them busy? You know, you see them at the mall and
Sporting events, trying to discover their talents,
and build that.
And
on
build that, not with the phones. The other thing I keep saying, you also need to be very careful with the phones. Because we've seen children as young as 9 being addicted to pornography. So we need to be very careful with the phones. We need to empower children before they get these phones, but then also allocate time. And because we know our preteens and our teens have a lot of energy,
Yeah.
we need to know how to expend
That
this
energy.
energy. Otherwise, they will take it to the wrong things.
Esther, the conversation of pornography,
Yes.
because then a lot of our preteens, our teens are exposed to that. They have access to internet, like you say, either the phone, somebody else's phone, or a computer.
Yes.
How do you have that conversation? You know, we can say pornography is bad.
Yes.
But why is it bad? Why are we telling them it's bad? How do we break it down to them so they can understand what pornography is?
It is to be able to let them understand the negative effects. You need to be very clear on the negative effects that pornography will have on children. Some of it, the main one being addiction. So once you're addicted, you can't think about anything else. You can't think about your future.
That's true.
You know, one way of refocusing teens is to ask them, as you're discovering who you are, what do you want to become? What are you doing right now to become the person you want to become? It's also to make children aware from the get-go that choices always have consequences.
Absolutely.
When they did something wrong when they were wrong, did they see the consequences?
They were punished.
They were punished.
Yeah.
Or did you take away the punishment? So they're not able to grasp the choice, consequence,
the relation.
Yeah. of it. If they can grasp it, they'll be sure enough to keep away from these things. So it's about a holistic way of parenting our children, so that when it comes to this small aspect, it's not actually a small, it's a big aspect. So that when it comes to this aspect of who they are, they're able to grasp it in totality and in a holistic way.
Okay.
Like I also said, it has a spiritual angle. So what does your religion or your spiritual beliefs talk about? Sexuality. It's something to also teach our children and to pass it on. And pass it on in a very meaningful way so that they're able to use it in a beneficial manner. Others sometimes use religion in a bad way, in a negative way, and it plays against us. If you tell them this is bad manners, like I said, if you tell them this is doo-doo and it's bad, for them they can't grasp doo-doo, the cockroach, and doo-doo, these are two different things.
Yeah.
For them it's one and the same thing. So our children just grasp things as we give it to them.
Yeah.
And this is what affects them even in later on in life. If you look at yourself as well, who you are right now as a sexual being was totally informed by how you were nurtured on it. And from the word go, like I keep saying, children need to know you're the trusted source of information.
Yeah.
That is the only way to counteract what you're afraid of.
If you don't have these conversations from the time, like you say, they're 2-year-old, they're 5-year-olds, they're 7-year-olds, is there any hope of getting through to our teens when you're having these conversations about sex? Will they listen to us?
Yes, they will. Yes, they will. It is the how you do it. It is the when you do it. It is the why you're doing it.
As you're winding up, Esther, boundaries especially for girls, because when you're preteen, you're more predisposed, to social media influence.
Yes.
You want to wear, as you say, the tight dresses like the other girls. You want the
Yes.
boys to like you.
Yes.
How can our young girls set boundaries?
It's about building the self-esteem from inward and from the word go. If you have built your child's self-esteem from the time they were 2, like I said with the potty training,
Yes.
to the time they're a preteen,
That should be all right.
their self-esteem is coming from inward. It's not coming from outward. So it's about what have I invested as a parent?
Right.
Because that is what you will reap when they're teens. If you had not invested anything, please don't expect to reap anything.
So let's
but if
start
you had
early.
invested quite a bit, you will actually see it through the teen years.
So let's start early.
Let's start early.
Thank you so much.
And it's never too late to start. Even if you have a teen, it is never too late. I keep saying as long as you're breathing, there's always a second chance.
That's a good pointer.
Yes.
And on that note, it's a good way to end. We thank you so much for your time and coming to share your expertise.
Thank you so much.
And with that, we come to the end of today's episode of Today's Parent, where we were breaking it down to you on how you can talk matter sex when it comes to your children in an age-appropriate way, starting all the way down from 2 years old onwards. Like Esther has said, it's never too late to have that conversation, and it's never too early for you to begin to have that conversation. I hope after this discussion, it has made it easier for you to talk about sex in your family. I have been your host, Christine Kasina, and we've been here in studio at Little Cribs, the home of fun, exciting, and durable kids furniture. If you're looking for parenting resources, head on to www.supermamas.co.ke. For other episodes of this exciting show, head on to Switch TV YouTube channel, where you'll get all the episodes that you have missed. We thank you for your time and look forward to having you next time.